I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender. Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So, Mark Ford, thanks so much for joining me on the James Altucher Show.
Thank you for inviting me. I got to tell you, like I told you before, as far as I'm concerned, you're a celebrity. I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm thrilled to have you here in Delray Beach.
No, I think people have to know what you've done. How many businesses have you either started or been involved in?
I don't know, but certainly it's in the hundreds.
In the hundreds,
Yeah.
okay. And okay, so the average, let's say, investor expects an 85% failure rate. What do you think your failure rate is in all these businesses?
You know what? It's hard to tell.
And not that you were an investor, because you've started many of these businesses.
Right. There are two problems in answering the question. One is that I'm 64 years old, so it'll all be in retrospect. And you know, in retrospect, the division gets cleaned up as you go. The other is that I'm Irish. So my feeling is that 85% of them were correct, but the truth is I have no idea. I'll say this. I'm definitely not one of these people that have it failed and failed and failed and then finally made it. I never wanted to be that way. I've always been extremely cautious as an investor of my time and my resources and my money. So my failure...
I like how you put that, by the way. Time, resources, money. Money last. Time is the most valuable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So because of that, and of course it took a long time to learn, I would say that it doesn't feel like I've had a lot of failures. But where my failures have been is generally in areas that I knew practically nothing about. For example, investing. You know, when my career was basically the career of starting as an employee and turning into an entrepreneur and then turning into an entrepreneur. And along the way, as I was making money, I was accumulating money. I didn't know what to do with it, so I would invest it according to whatever half-baked notion passed my way. And I did a pretty good job of losing a lot of that money, and I do talk about that.
Welcome to the club.
Right. So, yeah, I would say that generally I do think that it's possible. I think the general idea that to make more money you have to take more risk is wrong. I think I feel the opposite. I feel that the way to make money, to give yourself the highest percentage of chance of making money, is to avoid risky things and to do things that are more like sure bets. I guess I'm the equivalent, the career equivalent of the parent that says, forget about being an NBA player, forget about being a rock star. Just, you know, you can be a doctor or a lawyer or maybe a plumber and just stick with that. That's my view of...
But you haven't stuck with one thing. I mean, yes, you've started businesses, but they've been businesses in every category. And you say, for instance, you're not good at investing, and yet you've even started businesses, obviously in the publishing industry, about investing.
Right.
So you've been able to take this skill set of starting businesses and apply it to like any area, which is opposite. Many people are told, find your passion first and then start a business.
Right.
What do you think of that concept?
Well, I've thought both ways about it. I think it's possible to find your passion, turn it into a business, and have a happy life. But generally, I think if you turn your passion into a business, you're going to lose your passion. And so I think that there are things that we call vocations and avocations. And to me, the avocation is the thing that you love, and you're going to preserve your pristine. Because the truth is, whatever we're in love with in terms of a career, we're in love with it because we know practically nothing about it when we're kids, right? Being an astronaut or being a doctor or being a missionary. And when you actually end up being a missionary and you're riddled with mosquito bites and you're trying to help people and they're ignoring you and they're just asking for more money, and you say to yourself, geez, I wish I'd known about this when I thought it was so wonderful. So I think that for me, there are parts of my life that I've kept as avocations I've never wanted to make a business out of. And then and the other idea, what I really did is I accidentally got into the business I got into. I wanted to be a writer. I started off as a writer. I was working for a small newsletter publishing company in Washington, D.C., writing about Africa. Well, I wanted to write about like African culture, but the job turned out to be a job writing about African commerce. And I knew so little about commerce. I had a master's degree at this time. It was called African Business and Trade. And I remember thinking, what is the difference between business and trade? In fact, what is trade? I literally.
What's business?
Right. I kind of knew the concept business, but I literally didn't know what trade meant. And forget about counter trade, barter, and all the other things I had to deal with. So I ended up being in that business, and in 3 years, I figured out how to become the publisher of that, the top guy in that very small business. And then
is that what you mean by entrepreneur? You used that word earlier.
Yes, I would say you become either the most valuable or one of the most valuable, and you get a compensation deal where it's tied to the sales or profits that you create. So. So rather than being the sole boss and owning the business entirely, having that satisfaction, you attach yourself to a larger group that maybe has a lot more potential than you. That's the way I always felt, because there's so many things I didn't know how to do, like make money, and I'd rather have 10% of a big piece than 100% of a very little piece. So,
I think that's an important concept that a lot of people forget. They think they're either going to be in a cubicle or they're going to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And somehow an entrepreneur is some magical thing and being in a cubicle is some hateful thing. But there's this interplay, there's this middle place where, as you call it, entrepreneur, where you can figure out how your success within an organization can tie itself to your income.
Right. And I have noticed, and as a devout reader of your stuff, that some of your one of your most popular essays is how quit your job or how to quit your job, and that's been a theme. But I have noticed lately that you've been mentioning that it's possible within some kind of business environment where you're not the owner to become wealthy and have a good life. And I think that's true for me. It's not going to, if you go to work for IBM or Merrill Lynch, it's probably not going to happen because those companies are so big and so structured that the way to become successful there is to just do what you're told and move through the ranks. But if you work for a smaller company like Agora, when I had my first, after that Washington D.C., I went down to Florida, and I don't know if I should tell this story. Anyway, I decided I wanted to be a journalist. Okay, we have plenty of time. We can cut. So I decided I wanted to be a journalist, and so I took I decided I wanted to be a journalist.
Florida being the ideal place to be a journalist.
Exactly. I was going to Florida to visit my brother-in-law who had a jet ski rental business in Key Largo. So I decided to take a journalist. I was looking for jobs as a journalist. I decided to take 3 interviews in Florida because I thought I would get a tax deduction. I was trying to be clever. So I took an interview at St. Petersburg Times, Miami Herald, and some newsletter publishing operation going on in Boca Raton that I've been getting mailers for. And I took the 3 interviews, assuming I would get none of them because in D.C. there were no jobs at the time, and I got all 3.
And to be fair, the Miami Herald has been one of the best newspapers, at least in entertainment and.
No, it's a very well respected paper, and St. Petersburg Times too actually is a kind of a boutique newspaper that has a good reputation. I think I got the job because a woman that was working for me at night was the deputy foreign editor of the Washington Post, if you can believe that or not. Apparently they didn't pay their deputy foreign editors enough, so he was moonlighting for me. And I would edit her stuff. And she thought, it's so much easier to edit than write, as I'm sure you know. I would criticize something she said, and so she thought I was brilliant and told these two editors. I interviewed with the editor-in-chiefs, Andrew Barnes and whoever else was in Miami. So basically I had these jobs. So suddenly I found myself on the shores of Key Largo in the boat jet ski rental place, sitting down, having 3 job offers. And the guy next to me was remember Sean Penn in Fast Times?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So that basically was him sitting next to me. And his job in life was to fill jet skis with gas. And that was really the only thing he was qualified to do. And smoke doobies nonstop. And so I couldn't decide, but it was really 2 choices. It was, I saw the Pulitzer Prize over there, and I saw a big bag of money in Boca Raton. So I decided I would explain this all to this kid and let him decide, It could have been a coin toss. Well, it could have been a coin toss, but I knew enough about my life so far to know that I had no idea, what was the right decision. So I told him the whole story, and he just looked at me and exhaled and said, Boca, go Boca. So that was the decision, and really I took the job, and this guy turned out to be an amazing entrepreneur, very aggressive, a marketing genius, and he was publishing newsletters on like robotics and agribusiness. I didn't know anything about that.
Who was he publishing to? Was it like to other businesses or to individuals?
It was business to business, but as it turned out, it wasn't really a publishing company because his interest was in raising the money to start a publishing company through tax shelters, which existed at the time for those kind of publications. And he did have one editor there from McGraw Hill that was a real editor, but I don't think the business would have ever really made any money until a year later after I took a Dale Carnegie course, and I realized that my big problem in life was that I had too many goals. One common problem is people don't have goals, and then they say you don't write them down, you don't do this, you don't do that, which I think is true for many people. But I had a lot of goals, and I was trying to follow them all at the same time, just as I still am in a way. And I remember we came to that chapter, and it said, if you have this problem, you're going to have trouble with this exercise. And the exercise was to write down your top 10, narrow it to 3, and then go in. The Dale Carnegie program that I took was 14 weeks, and every week you would read a chapter, and then you go in, you would stand in front of this audience, and you would tell them what you're going to do. You make a little speech, and if they liked it, you got a pencil. I don't know if you ever experienced that.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty corny, but this literally changed my life. I got down to 3: teacher, writer, and millionaire, rich guy. And I could not decide. I was like frantic. I was sweating, driving there. My heart was pounding because I felt that if I chose one, somehow it must have been subconsciously I knew that it would change me, and I felt like I was giving up the others. And so as I was walking up to the podium, I had this thought, why don't you just make the money? Because if it turns out not to be what you think it is, then you just give it away, or what the hell? You can always do the other thing. So that's what I did. I said I was going to do that, and that changed me. I mean, overnight, it changed me. Everything got clear.
Did you have to pick one?
I had to pick one.
Okay, so you had to write down 10, you had to narrow it down to 3, and then that night you had to pick one.
And for the rest of the course, which was another 12 weeks or so, 11 weeks, you had to focus on nothing but that in terms of your goals, both when you went in and talked about things and when you were doing your daily work.
So you had to kind of, for the next 12 weeks or whatever, you had to kind of come up with ideas that would move you forward to being a millionaire?
Exactly.
So what was the first thing that you thought you needed to move forward?
Good question. So I got back in the next day, and I look on my desk, and my desk had this huge pile of paper. Back then everything was paper, And I've been writing this long book, basically our own style manual for the publishing company. a style manual, and I know you know, but for the audiences, like how do you punctuate things, what's acceptable usage, and very, stuff that's very interesting to an English major, but everybody else, it's very arcane. And I had realized I've been spending like half of my time writing this style manual. Meanwhile, there's like, there's a UPI style manual, there's Chicago style, the New York Times style manual, there's all these other style manuals that couldn't possibly be, that my style manual couldn't possibly equal. And that's what I was actually spending a portion of my time doing. So I just took the thing, I've been 3 months, and I threw it in the garbage.
Right, because it wasn't moving forward towards that goal.
Oh, yeah, I knew right away that the only way I was going to make money was I knew that the guy I was working for was all about making money. And so I thought, I got to just start doing stuff that actually helps us create more sales.
It reminds me, though, in some sense, and I don't know if you're going to make this book public or not, but I just read Persuasion by you, and that, in a sense, is a style manual, but it's a style manual, and it actually even gets down to punctuation, but it's a style manual that's about selling. It's about making money. So, and by the way, you used examples from Steinbeck, from literary examples, so it's not that different. Everybody needs to express their ideas, whether you're a fiction writer or a nonfiction writer or a selling something, an advertiser. So it's the same type of style manual.
Absolutely, and of course, Persuasion is about much more than money. It's about everything in life. If you have the ability to be persuasive, and we all do to some extent, but you can get more things done, including just about an hour and a half ago, I was at this little, we call it my wife calls it the swamp house, but it's actually a very cute little cottage I'm building on a lake about 20 minutes from here on a pond. I had to use my persuasive powers to convince her and the decorator not to completely redo a closet, spend $10,000 completely redoing a closet that we would only see once a year. And I'm happy to report I was successful.
And what was the persuasion technique used? We won't tell her.
I promise she won't. Only if one of her friends sees it will she find out, because she doesn't read my books and she doesn't come to my lectures or whatever. So well, of course, it started with flattery, by saying that I thought that the original idea was very good, but I also said that I know that what you like is, ample room for the whatever, brooms and those. Anyway, so I bit by bit, I appealed to her what I thought that she really wanted, and tried to explain how it could be done very quickly and efficiently without necessarily ripping everything out and starting all over again. So she was cooperative too. I'm not saying it wasn't the most masterful.
No, but I like the technique. So kind of you say yes, right, and then you figure out how you list the items. This is what you've said before, what you've invested in before that you've wanted. And here's how we achieve this with minimal
In other words, you do exactly opposite what you feel like doing as a normal spouse, right? And what you normally feel like doing, at least if you've been married for 42 years, is saying, you always do this, you always insist on blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, you're going to go nowhere. But this was important. I wanted that closet to be... Anyway, so where were we?
Well, okay, so you're at Boca Raton. You're
oh, right.
This guy was very good.
So almost the next day, I realized that my job I was the editorial director of this, and there were like 15 or 20 newsletters already. And I realized my job was to try to help sell newsletters. And so I started looking at the newsletters entirely differently, not how respectable they are from a literary point of view or even a technical point of view, but were they answering questions that were solving problems for people in the industry. And it was like, I took the glasses, the shades off, and suddenly the answers were so obvious. What needed to be done was so obvious after that. And virtually in all areas, if I had a conflict with an employee, I had a conflict with the woman that was actually the vice president of the business, I didn't have the same reactions. I knew that she was going to be gone eventually because she was completely now on the other side. When I came in, I was on her side. Let's build products. This is a corporate mentality. Let's build products we can be proud of as employees and which we can show to our friends and maybe win industry awards for. And who cares what it costs, And to let's try to make more money so that my boss one day will make me a partner. And so I knew that she was going to go. And when she started, I had lunch like 2 or 3 days later with somebody else where we had this luncheon meeting, and she was telling me about all the things that were wrong with my boss, our boss. And I knew it was to enlist me and to be part of their little clique. And I just knew that was the wrong move. So I just said, listen, I feel uncomfortable about this conversation. I got to tell you right now, I'm hired. Joel hired me. I'm his guy, and I'm sticking with him. And from that day forward, the next day, at least once a week, I was called in front of Joel by her to try to get me fired. And she didn't know anything about really editing, so her husband, who worked for us as a freelance editor, would give her ammunition, and she would come in and she would kind of repeat it as best she could, and then I would very calmly just explain what I was doing, which was making the newsletter more sellable, and why I didn't think why I wasn't paying attention to.
So if you always brought it back to this is going to increase more sales, which I'm assuming means this is going to create more value for our customers, that beats editorial. Back
then, I got to be honest with you, I didn't have that elevated view. My view was very selfish and it was very personal. I knew that Joel wanted to make a lot of money, and that's what he was in business for. And everything I did was about pleasing Joel's basic desire to make money. And that was good, but it was bad. I learned an enormous amount about marketing and about building businesses. He was a business genius. I got to tell you, a business genius. But he was also, he wasn't the most. Let's just say that his moral compass view of life was like, you take care of your family like gold, and the people around you like silver. I was in that category. Then there's what's outside of gold. Then there's bronze, and then maybe lead or dirt. And customers are in the dirt area. So, and this was actually quite common in the direct marketing industry, because back then you never saw your customers. You never saw them, and
but you had renewals, though. I mean,
we did have renewals. You had to produce. Yes, you're right. We had to produce better products that would get renewals. But I'm thinking of other things in terms of, refund policies. We were tough on refunds, and we didn't need to be. I learned later on we didn't need to be. But anyway, the truth was my goal was to please Joel, and my persuasion techniques back then were all about persuading the people in the business to do things that would increase sales. Later on, it was really, I almost thought that business was that way, and I think a lot of people do, that business has to be this me first kind of activity, but it wasn't really, and of course I felt terrible about when I thought I was doing the wrong thing, but
What's an example where you thought you were doing the wrong thing?
Well,
but it was still making money.
Some of our advertising was, we actually got in trouble for it. We were selling cubic zirconium diamonds. After we got out of the we sold the publishing business in '87, and we got into the merchandise business, which he already had some familiarity with. And so, I don't know if this is
totally different business.
Totally different business, same principles. Joel said to me once, he goes, before this happened, he goes, Mark, you've got to decide if we're fish or fowl. I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, are we publishers or are we marketers? I don't know, you tell me. I kind of, he goes, we're marketers. I go, okay. And he goes, what does that mean? He goes, we're getting rid of all these newsletters because the stock market's about to crash. This is right prior to 1987. We're going into the merchandise business. I said, okay, let's do it. I was still about pleasing Joel. And so,
how would he know where to buy the cubic zirconium cheap, where to sell it? Like, how do you figure that out from scratch?
This guy was. All I can tell you is we had these. I think they were Hasidic Jews that would come into our office in Boca Raton and be selling us stuff that was made in China. Now this was back in '87.
Yeah.
And this is long before this became China became a huge supplier of stuff. But we were buying. We were buying watches for $1.50 before everybody was selling $10 watches. We were buying everything. We were buying televisions for $16. And so we became one of the largest direct sellers of watches, knockoff perfumes, jewelry, cosmetic jewelry, you name it.
Like fake brand.
Not fake brand, but because you couldn't do that without getting into trouble. but things that resembled the brand that had similar titles. Like instead of give me a brand, like instead of Poison, we would call it. I can't even think of it. But instead, give me another brand.
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton, we would call it like Pierre Bouton or something like that. So anyway, so those are the kind of things I wasn't particularly proud of. Well, but we all. I mean, I think we try to. One thing, we had a deal.
Were you making money at this point in the sense that
we were making money.
But you personally, was your income tied to the sales of the company?
Yeah, I was making money. I think within a year or a year and a half of that Dale Carnegie moment, I was a millionaire. I got rich pretty quick because...
so you were about 34 years old at this point.
Yeah. After I started fixing the newsletters, we decided to go into the investment newsletter area. He was in the investment business before. He had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. At that time, he was the youngest person to have a seat, and he was... anyway, we went into the newsletter publishing business, and I forgot what I was even talking about.
You had a seat on the exchange. You were a millionaire at 34.
Oh, right. So we were publishing investment newsletters, and so now I was trying to learn about it. This business was just beginning back then.
And this was direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer, publishing newsletters for individuals, how to invest better. Joel happened to be an expert in penny stocks, and I knew nothing about stocks at the time. Penny stocks are stocks that usually go nowhere.
Right.
But
particularly based in Boca Raton.
Particularly, in fact, they actually did.
Boca Raton's like famous.
I know.
Like, and Las Vegas
and
as like penny stock land.
There was a New York Times article that actually drew a circle around his where he lived at one time as the center of this activity. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm ungrateful. He was a tremendous mentor of mine, and he treated me like gold and silver. But anyway, we were aggressive marketers of newsletters, all kinds of newsletters, but including those kind of newsletters.
And would you test? Like, would you put an ad in this paper, an ad in this paper, and see what sold better?
No, we sold mostly through direct mail, which was sending actual letters, sales letters to people in the mail, people who were buying other investment newsletters.
You would buy those lists?
We would buy the list, rent the list, right? You would rent the list, and you would send out a letter. It would cost you 35 cents, 40 cents per piece in the mail. You send out 100,000, spend $40,000, and hope you got back $45,000, and then you could stay in business. So the whole direct response publishing industry began primarily through investment newsletters. And anyway, so I invented, I was looking at them, and none of them interested me. I had no interest in stocks or bonds. But I was looking at what was working, and I went to some conferences and met some customers. And most of our customers were people that were in their 60s or 70s or older. And these guys were basically my parents' age. And they had been through World War II. Their parents had been through the Depression. And they had a very particular view of the world. And I realized that these newsletters were not addressing that. So I created an investment service that was, I wrote a package for something that was brand new. That wasn't just a newsletter, it was a club. And that became the Oxford Club, which still exists today and still a very successful financial service right now. But I went into Joel and I said, Joel, I've written this thing, I've invented the product, I've got the promotion, I've got everything. Well, it took me 3 or 4 months to do it. I said, I just want a piece of the action. He said, he looked at it and he told me to wait, and he came back the next day. He said, I'm going to give you a piece, and I thought he was going to give me 50% or something. And he said he was going to give me 10%. I said, great. And he goes, but I like your thing. I think it's worth at least, I don't know what he said, $100,000. I said, oh, well, thank you. And he goes, okay, so give me my check. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you said you wanted 10%. I go, yeah. He goes, well, you got to pay me $10,000 then. I go, we haven't even mailed it. He goes, hey, you agreed it was worth $100,000. So that was a lesson in itself. So that's an interesting negotiating technique where you establish the formula in advance without filling in the blanks. Everyone agrees to the formula, and then the negotiation's over before we even discuss numbers. He was a master negotiator, and if we had time, I would tell you the greatest negotiating story ever told. We can do this afterwards or when we have dinner.
No, tell me now. It's
okay.
Good. The
So-
greatest negotiating story ever told. I have to have on my podcast.
And this will be. Okay, so Joel is this great negotiator, and he's such a great negotiator that he got into a little bit of trouble with people in the industry because they would make deals with him, and they would leave happy, and then 3 or 4 months later they would feel that deals were unfair, and they would complain. Now, I don't believe in making deals like that anymore because that doesn't help when you do stuff like that. And I saw it with Joel. If you make a deal with somebody, they're happy, and then 3 months later they're mad, you have a bad business relationship, and that's not good. But Joel was just very skillful in the, winning through intimidation or the idea is that they take care of yourself first and the other person second. I completely think that's the wrong way to negotiate. But Joel was very good. And so Joel calls me in one day. We had a tax problem. We had made tons of money and all these different corporations, and we hadn't structured them right. And we were going to pay like $10 million in taxes that we shouldn't really have been paying. We should have been paying $3 million. And so we had his father-in-law, Sid, settle the problem with the IRS agent. And the guy, he worked hard. He took the guy out golfing. He did everything, and it was settled correctly. So Sid, basically, from his point of view, he saved us $7 million. So Joel calls me in the office. He goes, "Did you see Sid sent us his bill?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, what did you think?" I go, "Well, it was like for $85,000 or something." I said, it wasn't what we agreed to. It was more than twice what we agreed to, but I think we got a great deal. And he goes, "Yeah, you're right. But still, it wasn't what we agreed to." And I go, "Yeah, well, what are you getting at?" He goes, "I think we had to bring him in and talk to him about it." I said, "Come on, this is crazy. We're making tons of money, and this is your father-in-law. He's rich. You're rich. The only difference this makes to any of us is me, and I don't want to negotiate." He goes, "You're right. You're right." Go back. Next morning, he calls me and he goes, "I can't do it. We have to negotiate." I said, "All right, if you." And he goes, "All right, it's going to be you, me, and Phil." By that time, his little son was working there. "We're going to negotiate with him, and we got to plan it out." And I go, "Plan it out? You're the greatest negotiator
I like
ever."
how you brought in Phil, who's the actual blood relative of Sid. Because
Exactly.
Joel wasn't the blood relative, but we bring in Phil, who's blood.
I haven't realized until this point, but you're right. And so now I'm completely mortified because this is the worst expression of all the bad things that could go wrong that did. And so we actually practiced on negotiating. So, make a long story short.
By the way, I want to interrupt you again. I'm sorry to keep
No.
interrupting. But the fact that you practice negotiating, I don't think people realize how much of business is actually, it's like 95% is talking about all the interactions you're going to have. There's 5% of business that happens, and then 95% is all you and all your partners talking about how that 5% is going to play out.
Exactly. And that is one of the things Joel taught me. As smart as he was, and I've never worked with a smarter guy, and he had this amazing retentive mind, he practiced everything. And if he was going to have a meeting with somebody, he actually boned up for it. Where I would just go in and wing it, he would bone up for it. And that's one of the things I got from him. But so we practiced, and I had my role as the kind of outsider, and Joel had his role, and then poor Phil, as the grandson, had his role. And so the day comes, Joel actually sets up. Now, I may be making this up because I am Irish, but I think he actually lowered the seat where Sid was going to sit. And then we're sitting around him in this big power office, and Sid, I have to do standing up. Sid comes walking in after golf. Now realize, Sid is like 75 years old at the time, and he's got these little golf shorts. He's got these skinny, bony legs, and he comes walking in like this. "Hey, boys, what's going on?" And we were like, "Sit down, Sid." And he goes, "Oh." And so he sits down like this, and he's sitting in the chair like a little old guy, and we start laying into him. And I am dying. I'm so embarrassed, And we're just doing it, and he's getting whiter and whiter. And I'm thinking, they're going to kill him. He's actually going to die, and I'm going to be part of this, and I'm going to have killed an old man. How greedy can you get? What is wrong with us,
And was his primary argument, "This is not what we agreed to"? Was that everything?
I guess I don't even remember. I couldn't.
Like, Phil doesn't even need to do talking. It's just the blood relative in the room.
Believe me,
Joel can
I
do all
was
the
so
talking.
I couldn't think at that point. I have no memory of that. It was like a car accident for me. I can only tell you what we planned to do. Then it started, and then I do remember the end of it. I'm watching Sid, and he looks like he's about to die. He's getting whiter and whiter, and then he goes, we finally stopped and he goes, so, boys, is that it? And we say, yeah. And he goes, well, I only have one question for you. I said, what is that? He goes, did you think that was the entire bill? I'm not kidding. We spent another hour negotiating, and we settled for $180,000.
Oh, my God. So Sid turned the table.
We doubled with that one question. Did you think that was the entire bill?
Because Sid's argument is, I should get a percentage of the $7 million I just saved you. So it's a matter of arguing over the formula.
I never know to this date whether Sid, I think that was the entire bill, but Sid was such a master negotiator, he knew with one question, he could completely knock Joel's legs out. And we did. We ended up paying twice what he wanted.
Huh.
So there you go.
He changed the conversation. He changed it from the what we agreed to
to what it was worth, what the value.
$7 million.
Right.
It's more based on the $7 million rather than what we agreed to.
Right.
So changing the conversation is a valuable skill.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but we're talking about
because and you refer to this in Persuasion. This is the important emotional content. How would you feel without that $7 million? That's what he changed the conversation to.
Right. Exactly.
So it's not whether it became, hey, are you going to live up to what you agreed to how would you feel without $7 million? And that was emotionally stronger.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. My whole we don't have to stay too long on negotiating, but Bill gave me a whole different perspective of negotiating, which I admire greatly. And I do think to be a good negotiator, you have to have some of the skills that Joel has, but I would say that I would rather have 60% of what Bill does. And this is Bill's technique.
And so this is Bill Bonner.
Bill Bonner, right.
Publishing.
This is Bill's technique. No planning whatsoever. Just discussion beforehand about what the value of this might be to us, what it might not be. So Bill comes in with a good assessment of what he thinks the value is. He'll let you present your thing, and then so he'll say, he'll go, James, what do you think is fair? And then you'll tell him, and then he'll go, he only says one of two things. He goes, well, that seems fair to me, or he'll go, oh, I couldn't afford that. And if he says, I couldn't afford that, not only will you not complete that deal, you'll never do business with him again. Because what Bill's doing is much smarter. What Bill's doing is he's looking for long-term relationships, because he understands that the way businesses work is not by, I'm not talking about every business relationship like necessarily getting a muffler fixed. But in terms of building businesses for the long term, what Bill understands is that businesses are built on leveraging good relationships where people help each other. And you can find that out from the first negotiation. Fairness isn't a dot. Fairness is a range. You can't, it's silly to say that there's a particular dollar amount that a business is worth, and it's not worth $1 more or $1 less. So it's some kind of range. And after seeing Bill do this a number of times, I started to understand that. And what I'm looking for in a business relationship, in terms of evaluating the business, is does this person's perception of my contribution and his contribution in terms of its dollar value fall in a range that's compatible with each other? If this is the range, he might be up here and I might be up here, but there's plenty of overlap. But if they're disparate, then I can't do business with them. We could make a deal, but we're never going to have a relationship because the deal won't be satisfactory to each of us. And so the other thing that I do, and this may be contrary to what other people do, is if I make a deal with somebody and then 3 months later I can see that, and I think you've actually mentioned this in some of the stuff you said, I see that the deal is not good for him, I change the deal. I make it good for him because I want the deal to be good for him. If I make a relationship and it's not good for me and he won't want to change, then I got in bed with the wrong person. And so that's happened to me in my experience. And I'm fine. I do my thing, and then I stop doing business with you. And I have business relationships where there are people that I was kind of a partner relationship, and I felt like they didn't handle it right, and I was happy. I still have lunch with them. Their business is going down, and I hope I don't have any, what's that good German word for that? The pleasure in other people's Schadenfreude. I hope that, but it does pop up a little bit. I just smile at them. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But Bill's technique's fascinating because what I like about that technique is he already has in mind a sense of the value that he wants to negotiate.
Right.
But instead of just saying, I think it's worth X, he asks for advice. What do you think it's worth? And so he's getting several things out of that. First off, they might say something slightly less, but still within that range of acceptability, in which case he's kind of quote-unquote winning the negotiation. But he's also using it as a test. Am I going to be on the phone 6 months later arguing with this guy?
Exactly.
And it's incredibly useful.
Yeah.
That's valuable.
And it saves a lot of stress, too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to make this all about, people would be wondering, why did you interview him? Why didn't you interview Bill? Which you certainly can. But,
no, but you've got like this wealth of experience from all these different people, and obviously you've built hundreds of businesses off of it. So I want to hear how you've aggregated that wisdom from all these people.
Well, Bill and Joel for me are two people I think about a lot because they're not rich dad, poor dad, but they're like, you know, hyper
Evil dad, good dad.
Well, no, don't say it. He wasn't evil at all.
I'm not going to say evil dad.
He was a wonderful guy in many ways, but he was, let's say, hyper aggressive business type of dad.
Well, okay, you called it in one of your books, hoarder versus sharer. That you did identify, and I know you were thinking that way.
Well, anyway, so I've learned a lot from both of them. But I think in terms of living a much stress-free life, Bill is he's the genius at that, and his negotiating strategy. Bill also is a person that he almost never criticizes you. And so the genius of that, when you don't criticize people, and I'm not that way, I mean, I'm more from the other side, but is that you attract people that are very strong people. It's hard to hold on to great employees if you're very domineering. You can do it, but it's work. Bill, because Bill has this, I call it, it's the business equivalent of negative capability, he allows you to be your full self in his presence. He can see your full self, which is a big plus. You know your strong points and your weak points because he lets you act out, and so he's not battling you. You know, he doesn't feel the need to battle you. So he sees your strengths and weaknesses. He makes comments and kind of lets you do your thing. So as I said, there were one is kind of a hard way and the other's a soft way. One's a tense way and the other's a relaxed way. And I think for me, especially as you get older, I want my life to be, 60 or 70 or 80% relaxed, not, when you get older, you don't know this yet. You're still a young guy, but you do get, when you're about 60, you have a choice. There are two clear roads. You can become one of these, the typical road, the big road is you're going to become old and crotchety, and you're not going to want to do anything. You're not going to want to leave. You're not going to want to travel. You're not going to want to do anything out of the ordinary. And the other one is you can become one of these really cool old people that's like, relaxed, and they like people, and everybody loves them. So I'm trying to go in that direction.
So we've mentioned Agora a couple of times. They sell like $350 million worth of newsletters, information products, other products. And I do think the average, let's say, 150 million people who are sitting in cubicles right now would benefit from knowing, and you talk about this a lot in your books, particularly Ready, Fire, Aim, would benefit from learning how can I, A, come up with the idea that will get me out of my cubicle, and B, how do I start marketing this? It's I forget if you said it or someone else said it, but school kind of teaches you to get a job, but no one teaches you to get 7 multiple sources of income.
Right.
And so how can I, from your experience with all these different businesses, how can I start from step 1? I'm in the cubicle and I'm scared. Okay. I think I don't like my boss, or he's going to fire me, or she's going to fire me. I have kids to raise, and I have alimony to pay. I think in my mind is telling me I'm stuck.
Okay.
What's the first step?
Okay. There are 2 things you could do simultaneously that don't compete with each other. One is you have to figure out how to become the most valuable employee you possibly can be, and really the most valuable employee in the environment of your business, whatever that is, your department, your division, however far you feel you can range. And you got to figure out what that means. I'll get back to that in a second. The other thing is you have to decide whether your business is a business where an entrepreneur can thrive. Many businesses are not. I have to say that this becoming an entrepreneur would not work, as I said, if you work in a very corporate environment. If your business is political, it won't work. A political business is one where position and power are more important than creativity and productivity and profit. Profit, although when I was younger I wouldn't have recognized it, is the purifying element of business. When you have profit, when everybody's thinking about making profit, then politics, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, take second seat to coming up with good ideas and moving the business forward. So you have to be in that environment. And if you're not in that environment, I think you have to move. You do have to quit your job. And generally speaking, if you go into, if we're young people, I always say, go work for a small business that's growing. When you're working for a small, they say a rising tide lifts all boats, and we all have different capacities in our own internal boat, of our boats of our brains or emotional intelligence have different sizes. But if you're in a company that itself is growing quickly, your chances of moving up the ladder are much, much greater, and your chances of getting cross-departmental experience are much, much greater. So I do think it's very important to figure out whether your business is a business that that would accept you if you were an entrepreneur, that welcomes and lets people move up as fast as they, that's one of the things about Agora. Agora always, if somebody, in the old days, if somebody said, "Hey, listen, I want to start a whole new division," we would go, "Okay, go ahead, do it, take a chair." I mean, it was practically like that, and maybe that's not so unusual today when I read about how some of these California type businesses work,
But it's definitely like again, I always use Procter and Gamble as like the classic example. That usually doesn't occur in Procter and Gamble.
Right.
So
that
no offense to Procter and Gamble,
no offense,
I use them in every single
right.
podcast.
And look, their system, and you know what? It may even be that's the only way a business like that can be, because one of the things I've discovered as my businesses have gotten bigger, from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million to Gore's now over 500 million, is that a lot of the things that you hate in a small business happen inevitably. They happen for real reasons. There's a reason why big businesses are bureaucratic. It's not because evil people came in and decided to make them. It's just like governments. There's a reason why governments are so horrible in so many ways. It comes from a natural process of trying to solve problems with multiple people. But putting that whole issue aside, if you are working for Procter & Gamble, however, they're not going to change, so you have to change. You've got to move and go into a small, fast-growing business. But in the meantime, while you're waiting to get that better job, you should try to become the best employee you can. And by that, it means you have to, and I do talk about this in some of my books, you have to recognize that every business has basically three pieces. They have the sales and marketing side, they have the product production side, and then they have the management stuff, everything else that's done. The management stuff that's done is not where you're going to become a partner in your business. It's very tough to do that. There's one position basically in that whole structure, and that's for somebody that really knows how to manage profits. If the business is structured, certain types of businesses where managing profits is very important. But otherwise, it's generally in the sales and marketing area, or if there's some limited number of positions in the product production area where you can get a piece of the pie. That first newsletter I invented was I produced the product, and I also wrote the sales literature and so on. So I was kind of in both sides. So what you need to do is understand, how does that work in your business? How does your business make money? How does the marketing work? How does the sales force work? How do products get produced and reinvented and reproduced? And find out where you are. Are you in that mechanism? Are you part of that? And if you're not, can you shift over? Can you start volunteering to at least learn about those things? So, it is a pretty strategic, I'm not telling people just try to be the best person you can be. That's not going to work. And even being the best part of, this is a big topic, but part of this process is not just being the innovator in the business or being the great marketing guy, but you have to promote yourself. You do have to promote yourself within the business, because if your business is all big, there are plenty of people who want to take what you're doing, take credit for it, and put you in the closet. So you have to know how to do that too.
So it's interesting. So my only real experience with like big corporate America, I worked for HBO. And you're right, there was a production side. They made TV shows. There was a sales and marketing side. How do we get more customers for HBO? And then there was the whole kind of accounting/IT side, which was sort of the management side.
Right.
And I, of course, was on the management/IT side. So we were in another building. Nobody talked to us. It was totally worthless. And the way I would try to succeed at HBO was moving myself into the production side, where I was obsessed.
So you had the right instincts. My son, my oldest son, Liam, got into kind of like, he's on the IT side of a company that does colorization for movies. They're the biggest company in America or the world that does that. And he went into the IT side. He started out as an engineer. And I said, I was trying to say, I just want you to know that the problem with being in that part of the business is that the person that's really making the ultimate decisions about who makes money in business is looking at all their employees in terms of a ledger. On this side of the ledger are the expenses, and on this side are the production people. And these are the people that can make me money, and these are the people I need. And when you're an engineer, an IT guy, an accounting guy, even a legal guy, especially a legal guy, you're on the expense side.
No matter what.
Yeah,
You're always a cost
I may
center.
need them, but you're a cost, and I want to reduce that cost, and I want to increase this. So how do I do that? By giving these people more incentives, including financial incentives, and by just holding these people down because presumably they're replaceable. And so he's doing the same thing, by the way. He's moving into production right now because in that industry, like every other industry, when he got into it, believe it or not, 10 years ago, this is something I'm sure our listeners are not interested in, but I think you might be, in the movie business, the colorization, the movie business was still basically analog. The whole movie business 10 years ago was 80% analog, and all the colorization stuff was done on film. And it's only been in the last 10 years it went into digital, but now, in the last 5 years, the digital stuff that he was paying $1 million for, you can pay $5,000 for it. So it happened so quickly.
That's interesting. So it has a Moore's Law kind of effect.
Right, exactly. So he's a smart kid, and he can see the writing on the wall. He can hire people right out of college to do the work that he was spending all night. By the way, he almost deleted. The first thing he did was he almost deleted. This is a lesson for your young people. He called me up and he said, "I'm in big trouble." This is after about a month.
It's a credit to you that he called his dad when he was in trouble.
Yeah. I'm in big trouble. What did you do? He was working on, I think, Mission Impossible. Okay.
5, the next one coming up.
No, this is the first one, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was a giant movie like that. And I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, you know how he kind of liked to tinker with things?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I deleted the movie." I go, "What do you mean you deleted the movie?" He goes, "I deleted the whole movie. It's gone." I go, "You mean it's like a $150 million movie you just deleted?" And he goes, "Yes." I go, "Well, obviously it can't be entirely deleted." And he goes, No, I mean, it can be recovered, but it can't be recovered until I do all these things that will happen by the time there's a meeting tomorrow and whatever his name is coming in and they're going to know, right? They're going to know what happened. It was Chris, but it was the producer. So I'm like, oh boy, you're in trouble. Yeah. I go, so they're going to come in. All right. I said, I know this much. I don't know anything about IT, but I know this much about business. That the boss, the guy that's going to have to deal with this, doesn't know anything about IT either. And he also knows he's probably buying a lot of stuff. You're buying a lot of stuff from vendors, right? A lot of your technology and your stuff. He says, yes. Okay. So then this is the only thing you can do. You've got to storm into his office first thing in the morning and start screaming and yelling about those damn vendors. They effed everything up, and you're tired of this and you want a raise. I said, that's the only way you're going to keep your job.
This is the Sid technique.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's where I learned it from. And I mean, I was half joking, but I was serious because I knew that's the only the reason I would keep a guy on if they. So sure enough, he did that, and then I forgot about it. Then, like a month later, I was talking. I said, "Whatever happened?" He goes, "I did it. I went in and did it." And I said, "And did you ask for a raise?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, well, "What did you ask for?" He was making $45,000 at the time. He said, "I asked for $110,000. I said, "What? You asked for $110,000? He goes, "Yeah." I go, "How?" He goes, "Well, I added up all my overtime and I doubled it, and that's what it came to." I said, "Oh my God!" And I said, "He didn't fire you?" "No, he didn't fire me." I go, "Well, let me tell you what's going on right now." Yeah, this might have been a week or two after. He goes, "He's looking to replace you right now because he's a smart guy, and you're asking for way more than he thinks you're worth. So one of two things is going to happen. You will be replaced soon if he can find somebody for 60 or 70 that's as good as you, or if you don't get replaced in the next month or 6 weeks, you will get that raise. May not be as much." And sure enough, like 3 months later, they flew him to Las Vegas on a private plane, gave him like 90 and a free night in Las Vegas.
Well, what happened to the movie? Did he?
Oh, it went up. I mean, it got back up. The problem wasn't that the movie was permanently deleted. It's just that by the next morning's meeting, when they came in, they had to tell their clients, "I'm sorry, the movie is down right now." we need another 12 hours to. But it's more dramatic when you say you delete.
Yeah,
And that's how he told it to me. I was like, the whole movie's gone, you know. So anyway, that's the end of the negotiation.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
Looking to save big on holiday shopping? Xfinity Mobile has you covered. Now through January 10th, ask how existing Xfinity customers can get a free unlimited intro line for a year when they buy one line of unlimited. Plus, see how to get $400 off an eligible 5G phone. Visit XfinityMobile.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet. Reduced speeds after 20 gigabytes of usage per line. Data thresholds may vary.